So do you like games like Aliens Crush and Devil's Crush and the TurboGrafx 16, but wish there was a new game out that was a little bit more modern? Demon's Tilt may be for you. So Demon's Tilt is this new digital pinball game that was created by WIZNWAR, and it was released in December of 2019, although it was available in early access on Steam as early as January 2019. Now, I actually bought my copy on Steam while it was in early access, but I never played it until I realized, hey, it's out of early access now. So I'm primarily basing this off of the Steam version, though this game is also available for Switch and Xbox One, and as far as I can tell, it's not available on the PS4, nor do I know if it's going to be released on the PS4, but the asking price for it is $19.99 on all platforms. Now, if you're unfamiliar with games like Aliens Crush and Devil's Crush and Dragon's Revenge, Dragon's Fury on the Genesis, or Crew Ball, or games like that, this is a digital pinball game that does not try to be realistic in the least. In fact, it's more a video game than anything else, and that's fine. I mean, if you're looking for something realistic, this is not for you. This is all about having fun, explosions, and putting a bullet hell shooter into a pinball game. They managed to squeeze that in there as well. But because it's not like trying to be realistic, you can't do things that you would do in like Pinball FX3 or Pinball Arcade. So things like dead flipper passes, don't even try them because they won't work. So when I first started playing this game, I realized, hey, this game is a lot like Devil's Crush. You've got the 3 tiers. You've got the bottom tier, the middle tier with the face, the woman's face in the middle, and then you've got the top tier. So you got the 3 tiers. And but other than that, I really didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. There were a couple spots on the playfield where it's like, hey, shoot this, start mode, whatever. But once I hit that, it was kind of lost on me what I was supposed to do. I was just kind of in awe with the action on the table, things exploding, the camera moving in a certain way just makes it so exciting. And the music cannot be understated. It's got that Genesis, hardcore sound, and that was done intentionally. They made the music sound intentionally like Genesis, and it works perfectly for this game. So I was just really into the game, hitting the monsters as they popped up in the field, not knowing if that's what I needed to do or not. And I have to mention the at the top of the field, there's a monster called the Chimera. But before I even realized that, what you see is just a creature in an iron mask, and when you hit that mask enough times, the mask kind of explodes off his face, and it's a lion underneath, a lion's head underneath. And while I was streaming this game, we took to calling that creature Lion Man, but it is not. It's the Chimera. It's one big giant creature. I just had to put that in the video because I just thought it was funny. I want to trademark that, Lion Man. But also, as I was playing, I just kept seeing messages pop up on the screen, and I couldn't really fixate on reading them because I'm paying so much attention to playing the game. And even when I could hold the ball and read those messages, I really didn't know what they meant, especially like off to the side, there were 3, Arcane, Zodiac, and Hermit, and I didn't really know what that meant. It would say something like, oh, shoot this spot, shoot that spot. I'm like, I don't know what that spot is, but the nice thing is that as you play it, you start to understand things. So on the main menu, there is a option for quick tips. Now, I didn't go there initially, but when I went into quick tips, one of the first quick tips it says is nudge the ball, essential for keeping the ball alive, or essential for keeping alive. And yeah, you could nudge all you want in this game. I would recommend actually using a controller so you could nudge any direction you want. because it is so helpful. It's not like nudging in a real pinball table in the least. You're not actually nudging the table. What you're actually doing is kind of pushing the ball in a certain direction, and it actually moves pretty good, and it's very, very, very useful for keeping the ball out from missing a flipper or draining. But even better, you can redirect the ball to go into certain targets you want to hit, particularly the basket that's in the middle of the play field. Another interesting thing about nudging the ball is that in the lower right-hand corner, there is a little indicator of a skull on a pendulum or a swing or whatever, and every time you nudge that skull kind of swings back and forth, and it kind of fills up with like a red color to show like how close you are to tilting. But I found you really don't even need to worry about that, because I tried really, really, really hard to tilt, and I was just jamming the analog stick to tilt like really crazily, and it wasn't tilting. I had to actually do it in a rhythm to make it tilt. So as you play the game, don't worry about nudging the ball any way you want, because you're not gonna tilt. You don't really have to worry about it. But that little skull in the corner, that's a little cool little detail they kind of threw in there. So as I continued to play the game over, several hours, I started to realize, like, oh, this Hermit, Arcade, and Zodiac goals that are on the side, those are actually paralleling the first tier, the second tier, and the third tier, and what I should be doing when the ball is on that tier. So, for example, on each tier, there's a start mode shot. So if there's no mode or ritual, as they're called in the game, you basically hit that start mode shot or start ritual shot, and then it tells you what you need to do to earn a letter in whatever it is, Hermit, Arcane, or Zodiac. And there's a specific shot on each tier to hit to start that mode or ritual. And then you just go do what it is, and it could be something like, oh, hit a certain number of these monsters, or hit the pop-bumper this number of many of times, or, hit this orbit a certain number of times. And then the ritual completes, and then you hit that target again to start another ritual. Now, I'm not going to go into too much more detail about how to play the game other than that, because I think that half the fun of playing this game is just learning things as you go along. Learning, hey, there's multi-ball in the game. How did I get the multi-ball? So you just keep playing and you just kind of learn, and you could get multi-ball several different ways. There's a big multi-ball mode where you could lock the balls. I think it's called Chimera multi-ball, and that thing's crazy. Now, the one downside to the multi-ball is that based on the default camera angles, it's very tough to keep track of the balls in multi-ball, because sometimes the camera won't zoom out enough, and you might have a ball on one tier and a ball on a lower tier, but the camera is focused on the lower tier and you don't know what's going on up top. But you could manually change the camera to account for that. The downside to that is that if you zoom out too far, it might be very hard to see what's going on the table, because you're just so far back and everything's just so small. Now, when you're on the main menu and you go to start a game, you are presented with 3 game modes. There's the normal game mode, and just like it says, that's the normal mode. Nothing really special going on. You're on the one table with the 3 tiers, and nothing really changed from that. You're given 3 balls, and once all 3 balls are gone, your game is over. And then there's the EX mode, or the extra mode maybe, or extended mode. I'm not really sure what the EX stands for. But this is pretty much the same as the normal mode, except now there are some bonus subtables and some slightly different rules. And there are only a handful of these subtables. There might only be 3 of them, maybe 1 for each tier. I think that's the way it worked out, although I'm not 100% sure of that. But some of them are really clever. I especially like the bowling subtable, where you're just kind of given a break, and it sets up pins, and you basically hit the ball and you try and get as many strikes as you want. You basically do 10 frames, as far as I gathered, just 10 frames of bowling in the middle of your pinball game, and then you're returned back to the main table. Now, I can see why a lot of people would prefer this mode, and I can see why people would prefer not to play this mode. Now, the advantage is a bit more variety, but at the expense of just pausing the action to transport you to another table. Because in the normal mode, the action is just non-stop unless you lose a ball and then you launch another ball. But if you do play this EX mode, the game is going to stop once you I guess you have to earn a token and then hit a certain spot to enter these sub tables, and then the game just kind of stops for a while there's a slow transition into the new table, and then you play it, and then as soon as you either beat it or you lose, you're slowly transitioned back into the main game where you're just given to launch the ball again. So it's really up to you whether or not you like that or not. And then the last mode is the hardcore mode, and that's kind of the same as the normal mode, except you only get one ball, and the tier 1 outlanes are slightly different to make it easier to drain the ball. Now this game has a lot of options you can change. The downside is that the options are kind of spread all over the place in the game. In fact, when I was streaming the game, I had to have people tell me, hey, you can change the page on this options page for more options, because it really wasn't that apparent to me. But some of the things you can change is you can actually make the screen tate mode or vertical mode, and there's a bunch of different options for that. So if you wanted to rotate your screen, or your screen is just normally in portrait mode or whatever, I think the game can handle that. You've got your keyboard and joystick remappings. Now, I wouldn't recommend actually using a keyboard. I think this game is a lot easier to play with a controller, just because you do need to nudge a lot. But I do have my pinball control, my digital pinball controller that I made, and I initially tried to play the game using that, and I really couldn't, because it wouldn't let me remap the buttons to the keys that I needed in order to nudge, period. Like, it wouldn't let me map to the what do I have here, the control or the alt buttons at all, and that's what I have my nudge buttons set as. So I couldn't really use it on. And like I said, nudging is really essential in this game for getting good scores. But also, what you can adjust are the multiple camera adjustments. I really haven't messed with this personally. I kind of like the default settings it did. But if I really wanted to, I could adjust the multi-ball camera to make it so I could see the whole table. But on a regular screen, I think that would be very hard to see everything, so I just never changed that. And you've also got multiple color filters, so you could kind of change the way it looks. I think there's maybe 3 different filters, and then your standard mode. And then you've also got the option to add in RGB and or scanline overlay effects. And that's pretty cool as well if you want it to look more like a Genesis game or more like an old school game, or just if you want to make it look like you're playing in our CRT, and that's just a really cool effect as well. And then also, you do have to change the screen for this, but there's multiple music options as well. I don't know why, but it defaults to just one music. Like, if you remember playing Devil's Crush on the TurboGrafx 16, when you started playing a game, it gave you the option to play, one track or the other track. In this game, you do have multiple tracks. I think there's like 4 tracks, 3 or 4 tracks, but you wouldn't even know that unless you went and dug in the options to be able to change it. So I do have a blast with this game. I do not regret this purchase at all. In fact, if this game were to be released by something like Special Reserve Games or Limited Run Games on the Switch, I would definitely buy a physical version of this game. I'd definitely buy the game again. It's just to have a physical version. This game is just so awesome. It's got awesome music. It's got awesome gameplay. I mean, some people may be disappointed that there's just one table. I saw some people commenting, hey, is there only one table? But that's not really the point of this game. The point is just action. It's just a callback to old school games like Devil's Crush, Jackie's Crush. I've said them all already. Crew Ball. And it's just a modern take on that, modern hardware, and I just think it's awesome. Now, before I go, I just have a couple of tips if you're playing this game. It's things that I figured out or were told to me while I was streaming the game, and it made things a little bit easier. And the first one is to turn the ball trails on. They're off by default, and it can make the ball kind of hard to find sometimes, but turning the ball trails on, it actually makes it a lot easier to follow where the ball's going. So I would recommend that, go into the options and turning that on. Also, you could change the background music to random. So every time you launch the ball, a different song plays. And I would just highly recommend that because I think every single song is awesome and they deserve to be heard. And last tip, just have fun with the game. Don't worry about the leaderboards, especially if you're just getting into the game, because looking at the leaderboards will make you depressed. Don't look at the achievements either, because there's an achievement for scoring 1 billion points in the game. And there are certainly people that have scored their 1 billion points in the game. But after I played the game for several hours, I feel like I'm a long way away from getting 1 billion points. It's not undoable. I maybe have hit a tenth of that score. My best score is maybe a little bit over 100 million at this point. 130 something million, I believe even. And it just keeps getting better and better. You just need to play it, have fun. There are leaderboards, but just worry about your own personal best for the, just getting started and just have fun with the game. It's so easy to have fun with the game too. Just go with it. And that's all I have. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Yeah!